Welcome back. So today we're going to be reviewing this pistol right here. This is the FNX 45 by FN. I've shot about 1,100 rounds through this. Some of those were out with friends. The overwhelming majority of them were on training expeditions. I've been hiking with it a lot recently as well because I want to make sure that it's going to be capable in a duty situation. This is going to be my thoughts. The way we're going to structure this video is we're going to start off with the general overview of the gun. We're going to move on to the pros and cons, and then I'm going to summarize everything at the end. To start off, let's talk about how I've got this set up. The way that I've got this set up, I've got a Holosun 507C on the top here, and that's the X2, so it's got either the dot, the circle, or the circle dot. Personally, I just run it with the dot. Honestly, I would just buy the regular version instead of the X2 version. There's no real reason for it. The only big difference is the solar thing on top, and to be completely honest, the solar bit is pretty much fucking useless. So the next thing I've got on here is the Surefire X300 Turbo, or X300 Ultra, sorry about that. And I've got that on there because this has been my bedside gun for the past year or so now. So if anything bumps in the night, I've got the red dot and the Surefire to light up the house when it's dark. Going from front to rear, we've got a threaded barrel. This barrel is 5.3 inches long. It extends about a ½ inch out the end of the slide, giving this gun a really unique sort of profile to it. You know, you can obviously tell at a glance when it's the FNX 45. Further back, we've got the front and rear sights. These have a tritium night sight in them. When I've been looking down the sights in the dark, they've been pretty well visible. And I really do like these sights as well. My background as a collegiate Olympic shooter, these sights are really nice. They've got a lot of what I'm looking for in a pair of iron sights. So the front sight blade isn't too fat that it obscures your vision. And I believe that the front sight blade on this is matched for the average shoulder width at 25 yards. And then your rear sight is got this nice knurled texture on the back of it. And then you've got those same tritium highlights at the top there, the same tritium dot. Another thing that's really nice about these sights is that they have a good amount of light in between, so you can tell easily where your shot is going to be off by, if you're going to be off, and you can use that information to correct. We've got the beefy slide is up next. You've got some aggressive slide serrations in the front and on the back there, as well as really nice detailing from FN. You've got the FNX 45 branding there and then the FN logo. On the opposite side here, you've just got their manufacturing location. Yeah, the slide is, you know, it's got that really aggressive texture there, so you can overpower the sort of strong recoil spring that this gun has. Going underneath, you've got a 1913 rail on the polymer lower, your trigger, the takedown lever, your slide stop, and then your safety and decocker. And then you've got a ambidextrous magazine release, so you can hit either side of it simultaneously, depending on what you prefer or how you train with this gun. And then even further down, we've got our magazine. When we go on to talk about the pros and cons, I'll talk about the magazine for this, but I'm not a real big fan of it. And then on top, of course, of the slide, you've got an optics cut. They've chosen to go for a pretty standard optics cut, and then they include different spacers that you can use to mount different footprint optics. So for this 507C, I needed to use a K-cut spacer, and it's been true. I haven't seen it lose zero, and I put that on after about 100-200 rounds of shooting iron sights. So let's talk about the pros. The pros of this gun are the fit and finish are fantastic. Granted, that's what you should expect from a $1,300 gun, but FN really went above and beyond with the fit and finish of this gun. You can really feel that premium quality in the gun, and the gun's got a good heft to it, so it's satisfying to shoot. Like I was talking about earlier, the slide has these really aggressive serrations on it, so whenever you're trying to rack the slide, those aggressive serrations make it easy to overpower the recoil spring and really slingshot this slide. As far as the recoil impulse goes, I shot a couple 1911s and another FNX45 and then the FN510 while I was doing this review in order to sort of compare the different pistols. And the FNX45 far and away had the best recoil of the 4 guns that I shot. Most of my experience is shooting with 9mm, so having that experience with 45 was pretty enlightening to just how high quality the FNX 45 is with its recoil management system. And a lot of that comes from the chonky slide on top here. This slide is hefty, and that really helps mitigate that recoil. So despite being a 45 caliber gun, it's a fairly comfortable gun to shoot. And I've even taken out some first time shooters and had them shoot this and my SIG P320 or the M17, and they far and away preferred the FNX 45. The next thing I really like is the single action trigger. So the single action trigger is maybe 1 or 2 pounds. I can go ahead and show that to you. So you've got this fairly short, maybe 3mm take up, and then a pretty good wall. The hammer comes back a little bit and then it breaks through. So that's the single action trigger. And the single action trigger, granted it's not a 1911 trigger, but single action triggers are known for being pretty good, and this one is along that same lines. I was pretty confident making hits out to 50 yards, or I think the furthest one I hit was 100 yards with this one, and that was on a 12-inch plate at 100 yards. So that single action trigger really gives you the ability to make more precise shots. It feels to me like it's probably 2 or 3 pounds on that single action trigger, so it really is a pretty high quality trigger. Okay, so this is me during the edit. I think I should have been a bit more harsh on the single action trigger than I was in the original video. The single action trigger is about 3 pounds. It's got a little bit of creep through the wall, and then it has a clean break at the end. So you have that first little take up there, that first stage, you hit the wall, and then there's a little creep throughout the wall, and then it breaks clean. So I wanted to make sure that that was clear, because this is not like a precision trigger like a 1911 trigger, right? A 1911 trigger has a really strong wall. You know, typically they're like 1 pound or 1.5 pounds at their wall, and then they break clean. This is not that. It's got a little bit of creep through the trigger, and then it breaks clean. So I just wanted to make that clear. It's a combat trigger, not a precision trigger. The next thing that I really like about this gun is, like I said, the recoil management, those slide serrations, the suppressed performance. Granted, with the modern implementations of 9mm, using 45 for suppressed isn't as important as it was back in the day, but it's still really impressive when you shoot a 45 caliber gun suppressed. I had to rent one that I shot suppressed, but it was still really nice. And again, with the recoil of this, it was one of the most fun guns that I've shot suppressed. So, moving on, like I said, I really like the iron sights. The iron sights are probably up there with some of the best iron sights I've seen on a pistol. They've got that tritium dot, really good width, and I honestly can't think of anything bad to say about the iron sights. and their suppressor height iron sights out of the box. Another thing that I really like about this pistol is the reliability. So like I touched on a little bit during the fit and finish, this one, it really is an incredibly reliable pistol. Now let's move on to the things that I don't like. So the first thing that I really don't like about this pistol is the magazine. So the magazine has this big fat base plate on the bottom, and that base plate comes forward of the grip. So when you're inserting the magazine, if you do like I do, you draw it from your belt and then you've got your finger on the front there. As you're inserting, your glove or finger is gonna get caught in that gap there between the gun and the frame. And that's really, let me just demonstrate that a little bit better for the camera. So that gap that locks up right there is super frustrating, especially when you're trying to do quick reloads. That gap really catches your finger. Another thing I don't like about this gun is the magazine well geometry. The magazine well geometry is pretty dated. It has minor, when I say minor, I mean extremely minor. Maybe like 2 millimeters of flaring at the bottom of the mag well, and that's only on 3 sides. So if you're inserting your magazine, it's pretty easy for it to get caught up on something. Or if you insert it at an off angle, it's gonna get caught. Or if you're coming in like front to back like that, it gets caught. If you're coming in back to front, it gets caught. So the magazine geometry and the magwell geometry are really dated. I think that's the most dated aspect of this pistol, are the magazine geometry and the magwell geometry. The next thing that I don't like is the double action trigger. Let me just decock that real quick. The double action trigger is extremely long, creepy, with no discernible wall, and it is heavy. And when you're in the double action mode, the trigger is extremely far forward. So let me just ghost that trigger for you. So this is probably about 3 pounds right here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 maybe. Maybe 9 or 10 pounds for that double action trigger. And that's an entire, if you don't have your like good grip on the pistol, like if I break my grip a little bit here and try to reach that double action trigger, it's so tough to get up around and get that double action trigger. Granted, this is an issue with all hammer fired or single action, double action guns, but it's something that I found particularly noticeable with the FNX 45 based on its trigger position within the magwell and how thick the grip is. If you don't have like man hands, this gun is gonna feel big in your hands, which is part of the reason why I like it, because it feels substantial. It feels nice to shoot, but it's also part of the reason why I hate to shoot it, is because you really have to have an aggressive grip all the way up in that back strap to be able to fit your finger onto the double action trigger. Something else that I've noticed while I've been shooting this is if I insert the magazine really hard, that will send the slide forward just through inertia. So I don't know if that's a fit and finish thing. I don't know if that's one of the things with my gun specifically, but that is something that I've noticed, especially if you're like coming for an aggressive reload. Another thing I really hate about this is the weight. It weighs 33 ounces unloaded, so almost 3 pounds unloaded. And then once you load, 15 rounds plus one in the chamber of 45 ACP, that's 230 grains. So it comes to about 4.5 pounds with all the lights, accessories. So it's heavy. I've been running around with this at some of my drills out at the flat range. It's very noticeable when you're running with this on your hip, especially as it's rocking back and forth and this 4 pounds of weight is bumping up against your leg. It's gonna change your gait, and over time that's gonna cause stress injuries, especially if, like me, you go hiking with your guns. Having this 4-pound gun in your holster as you're hiking really causes an issue. Another thing that I like about this gun though is the grip texturing. The grip texturing is this really aggressive, spiky grip texturing, and then you've got interchangeable back straps on the back there, so you can get a really good grip on this gun, and even with sweaty hands, the gun stays locked in place. Another thing is that it's just fun to shoot. 45 is a fun caliber to shoot, especially with one that's for the caliber as light recoiling as the FNX 45. This gun is a genuinely fun gun to shoot, but you're not gonna get splits like you're getting on your 9mm, right? Your Glock, your P320, is gonna get faster splits than this. Not just because the double action trigger, but because that 45 ACP cartridge takes so much longer to get back on target compared to 9mm. So I've been so negative on it. Why did I buy this gun? Well, the reason why I bought this gun was because I grew up playing Call of Duty Black Ops 2 in middle school and like junior high, and they had this gun called the TAC 45, and that was like one of my favorite guns in the game. I always thought it was so cool. And then when I got into high school, I started playing Arma 3, and Arma 3 has the 45, and it's the FNX 45. And so I fell in love with this gun from video games and movies, and when I saw it on the shelf, I'm like, man, I love this gun. I want a home defense gun, like something that I'm gonna put in my bedside table. So I picked it up and I shot it, and it's still just as cool, but it's not nearly as practical as I'd hoped it to be. Let's talk about use case then. Where do I see this? What's the philosophy behind it? Well, like I was talking about earlier, 9mm versus 45 is really something that's been settled at this point. 9mm is clearly the superior cartridge. So we have a pistol that's chambered in an antiquated cartridge that has some antiquated design features like the magazine, but is really ahead of its time compared to what was releasing at the time. You've got that integral slide cut for an optic. You've got the 1913 rail for a light. You've got the thread protector. You've got the threaded barrel. So it really was ahead of its time, but now it's sort of fallen off. So what I use it for currently is my bedside gun, right? I live in a pretty big apartment complex, so having a 45 compared to a 9 is something that's nice to me, because I can't put an AR next to my bed because it's going to overpenetrate and kill my neighbor's dog, right? And I'm certainly not the ATF. I'm not in the business of killing dogs. So I need a gun that is substantial, something that is going to sort of bridge that gap for me between 9mm and a rifle. And really that's kind of where I see this fitting in, is something that is going to be heavy, but it's purpose built to be heavy, because it's not something that you're going to be taking out with you. It's something that you're going to be leaving in one location and using it if need be, opposed to something like a rifle or a smaller pistol. You really can't compete with having 16 rounds of 45 ACP on tap in something that's similarly sized to this. Granted, it is a lot bigger than many handguns. especially when you're talking about its thickness, its girth. I think it's about a 1/4 inch thicker than my P320, and the handguard, the grip is substantially thick. But that still makes it something that is nice in the hand and something that I can feel confident in a home invasion scenario to use. That also mitigates the risk that comes from having the double action, single action trigger. I can just keep it in my bedside table on safety with the hammer cocked, so I never have to worry about that first double action trigger pull. It's not like I'm carrying it around in a holster, right? I think that's a significantly better use case for this than any sort of boogaloo type action. Because if you're talking about boogaloo type stuff or shit hit the fan, this gun is not going to be the gun for you. It's far too heavy. 45 ACP weighs twice as much as 9mm. So you're going to be running around with a gun that's twice as heavy, with ammo that's twice as heavy. You're just going to get worn out. You're going to get cooked, right? So this gun has its place, but it certainly isn't going to be saving the world, right? Another thing to keep in mind, especially if this is your first gun that's got a threaded barrel, is the thread protector is going to shake itself loose with recoil. So what I do is I get like one of those white plumber's tape rolls, and I wrap the threads with that plumber's tape and then screw on the thread protector, and that locks the thread protector in place pretty well, so you don't have to worry about losing the thread protector and having your threads get all knurled up. That about covers all of my thoughts on the FNX 45. If you guys want to see me do a 9mm versus 45 ACP video, let me know in the comments. Have you guys shot the FNX 45? If so, what did you think? Did you like it? Did you not like it? How did you think about how thick it is? Did you guys like the double action, single action, or are you more striker fired guys? That about covers it though for this review of the FNX 45. I haven't quite decided if I'm gonna keep it yet or if I'm gonna sell it. I think for now it's gonna stay in my bedside table. Eventually I'll probably just keep keeping it for the cool factor. So, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it.
Okay, threat, engage, back right. Threat, transition, front right. Safe, front left. Engage. Back right. Back left, sorry. Engage. Back right. Threat. Front right. Transition.
Empty.
Oh, okay. Safe.